Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and I'm passionate about inspiring, motivating, supporting and informing women over 50 to embrace this exciting time of life. Health and wellness in mind, body and spirit are the foundations for living well, but there is so much more to a life well lived. Each week, through conversations with my guests, I'll be presenting topics that will help us all to live well and enjoy life. So join me as we discover new ways to become women living well after 50. Are you ready to start living? What are you waiting for? Let's get started. I'm Sulon Carrick and it's so lovely to have you join me. Are you tired of living by default rather than living your life by design? Do you need some magical disruption instead of just going through the motions? In this episode, my guest reveals how saying hell yes to disruption in your life, you can open yourself up to a catalyst shift that can transform your life. My guest today is Kat O'Sullivan, a keynote speaker, podcast host, author and coach. For over 25 years, she has helped individuals and organisations discover new possibilities, even when they feel it's impossible. Kat has worked across sectors, corporate, non-profit, education and privately owned businesses, providing a roadmap, support and tools to bring the vision to life. She's passionate about helping people move towards the future, just waiting for them to say hell yes to new possibilities. So let's go and join the conversation. Welcome, Kat. It's lovely to have you join me on the Women Living Well After 50 podcast.
I'm so happy to be here with you, and I so appreciate the work that you're doing, and it's, aligned so much with where I'm at right now in terms of really wanting to make a difference, with women over 50. People, I'm known for doing the seemingly impossible. I mean, over and over again throughout my life. And people often ask me, well, what prepared you for that? And I thought that might be a good place to start because it is the thing that made such a difference, turned my life in a particular direction. And it started when I was actually like 14. And I went to see an Up With People performance. And a lot of people may not know what that's about, but it's a 2-hour live, very upbeat performance with young people from around the world that is meant to, motivate people, inspire people to see past differences and create more unity. And I was so inspired by that it became my dream to travel with them. But it was just for college age kids, and I'm like 14, but it was like my dream. And then at 16, they decided to create a high school cast, first time, for juniors and seniors in high school. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity. And, of course, I share this with my friends and family. And they're like, oh, come on, Kat, they're only picking 100 kids from around the world. What makes you think that, you could get chosen? And I'm like, this is my dream. So I applied. The envelope comes in the mail, I rip it open. And the only word I see is like, congratulations. And I was so excited. I'm running around the house like I just won the sweepstakes or something, and I'm like, I'm in, Up With People chose me. And my parents just looked at me and said, well, there's no way you can go on the road for a year. We can't afford that. And I'm like, I guess the question is, what do you do when somebody tries to steal your dream? And I was like, there is no bleeping way they're going to steal my dream. I'm going to figure this out. And as it turned out, I'm going to come back to this. So I decide I know exactly how I can get this paid for. And I pick up the phone and I call NBC Studios in Burbank. And I'm like, Hi, this is Kat. Can I talk to Bob, please? Now, know that I'm talking about Bob Hope.
Mm.
He happened to be there. They put him on the phone, and I was like, "Hi, Bob. I don't know if you remember me, but we met last year when you were the MC for an Up with People performance, and I know how much you love what they do." And so I went into my song and dance, about this great opportunity. And the next thing I know, he says, "Where do I send the check?" And he paid for
Wow.
my entire year.
Mm.
And it is what changed my life because, in that moment when everyone was poo-pooing the idea of me being able to even apply, let alone get accepted, and then, my parents, you know, not supporting me in that moment, I could have just, let it go.
Mm.
And instead, I made a decision to figure it out. And, I did my first seemingly impossible thing. I called Bob Hope and asked him
Mm.
to sponsor me. And,
Yeah.
I called that initially, I called it my Bob Hope strategy, which I've used my entire life, which is when you're faced with an opportunity, it's time to say hell yes and reach out and do, whatever you need to do, believing that you are going to figure it out and that you are going to find a solution. They're going to say yes, and it's going to be amazing.
Mm.
It's a
And I
complete
would
mindset thing.
Yes, yes, but I was comparing you at 16 to me. And, I probably had dreams and well, I did, and had things that I perhaps wanted to do, but I didn't have the self belief or the courage to go against what my parents said. And you can't regret what happens in life.
No.
Things happen, but when you look back, and now you're saying you're 16, you had that determination at that age, which I think is so admirable, because not many, at 16, especially when we were 16,
Yeah.
it was a different world then, and you would have really stood out. Today, we've taught our children and grandchildren to have that confidence to reach out and grab their dreams. But back in those days, it was a much more conservative world that we lived
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. It was very risk averse,
Mm, mm,
So, I mean,
yeah.
I just, I feel so blessed that at 14, I had that experience and saw something that inspired me to the point that, when that opportunity came, I was just like, there is no way I'm taking a no for answers,
No. Yeah.
none.
Yeah.
And I've
No.
applied that Bob Hope strategy, which now I call my hell yes strategy,
Mm,
um, with every opportunity or challenge that I have faced throughout life, and there have been many, with that kind of mindset that, I'm going to figure it out. And because of that, I've done some pretty incredible things. And um, then, you know, when COVID hit, I had a wake up call, and I was like, nothing was working. I had a very successful consulting coaching practice, um, and it just came to a sudden stop. And, I would like to say that my immediate thing was kind of like my hell yes strategy. And I was full of, positivity. And I don't know, it really took me off guard. And,
mm,
you know, I was doing what many of my clients were doing, which was digging in and continuing to do what we'd always done, expecting different results.
mm,
Sounds
mm,
like a quote that's pretty convicting, right? It was
mm,
insane. And, there was a point where I'm like, this isn't working. What am I going to do now? And I was so kind of downtrodden. And, then one day my husband came into my office, innocently asked me, hey, hon, can I get you anything? And I knew he was talking about coffee. But the first thought I had was a new life.
Mm,
Oh my gosh. I mean, I get goosebumps even saying that now. It was such a
mm,
wake up call for me because it caught me off guard. I mean, it was just an automatic, I want a new life. And of course, I didn't
mm,
say that out loud in the moment, but I did share it later. And, at that time, I'm like, I want to do something really different. I want to stop doing what I'm doing. I want to make a shift. But oh my gosh, in the middle of COVID, there's no way we can afford to,
mm,
me, who is the primary wage earner, because my husband's 18 years older than me. And, I found myself back in that place of, I've got to figure this out. I
mm,
had to shift my mindset from it's impossible to asking myself what have become really important questions, which are, what if it's not impossible? And what am I not seeing? And it was like that opened the floodgates, those questions,
mm,
because all
mm,
of a sudden, the next day, I saw this article about a woman who retired in Mexico on her fixed income.
mm.
I'm like, wait, what? You
That's
know,
a message.
that's a message. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is that possible? And oh my gosh, would I ever want to move to Mexico? I mean, I'm in the United States in Los Angeles, and, there were a lot of negative assumptions about Mexico,
Mm,
but
mm,
it gave me a spark of what if, what if, what if, and not what if it won't work. It was what if it would work? What would that look like? And to make a long story short, I did my research, and 3 months later, we were on a plane and we moved to Mexico in the middle of the pandemic.
mm, mm,
And, I'm not saying it was easy because packing up, we had a house that we'd been in for 30 plus years. And we
mm,
literally sold our house, our 2 cars, our boat, our furniture. I mean, we literally packed our bags and our golden retriever and got on a plane and moved to Mexico. And
mm.
of course, everyone said we were crazy. This will never work. Are you kidding me? Mexico. And I'm telling you, it is the best thing we could have ever done. We love it here. We've been here almost 3 years. And, my dream in making that shift from consulting and training and leadership development and whatnot, which was great. And I was, very good at it and I loved it. But it got to the point where it was no longer meaningful. And when COVID hit, it caused me to stop long enough to realize I was really burned out and
Mm.
wanted to make a shift. But, I'm going to say it, at this age in my life or stage of my life, can I really make a significant shift?
Yeah. And I think, like as you were saying that, I was thinking about, family, friends, uprooting yourself and not just going to a different suburb or perhaps a different state. You've gone to, a different country. And especially, like, for example, we've moved back closer to our family, which is the opposite thing.
Yes.
But it's sort of, it's a big change, and you would have to overcome that initial fear of, oh, what are we doing? Are we doing it?
Well,
Is it going to work?
there's so many doubts that creep in. I mean,
Mm, mm,
am I good enough? Can I make this big of a change at this stage in my life? What if we do this and it doesn't work? What are people going to think? I mean, there was just an endless array of
mm,
negative what
mm.
ifs that I,
Yeah, and also, sorry to interrupt there, to
yeah,
add to that, the healthcare, because as we're aging, that's what we're going to be needing more of. I mean,
yes,
you try to stay as healthy as you can, but you know, that's all part of the aging process as well. So thinking about going to a different country where you don't know about the healthcare and things like that, it would have been very challenging.
Yes, and I will say that we have gotten the most incredible healthcare since we've been here at a fraction, a fraction of the cost than in the United States. And I hate to say that about the United States healthcare system, but it's horrible. And, even though we're in Mexico, I needed to establish a primary care doctor in California, where we used to live, for health insurance purposes, should we ever need to go back to the United States. It took me 4 months to get an appointment. And here you can get an appointment with a specialist in a week, and you don't need a referral.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're paying out of pocket, but what we're paying is less than a copayment would have been in the United States. And we have easy access, to anything that we need right where we live. And if we need something even more specialized, we can go to Guadalajara, which is like an hour from here. And they have, some of the top, specialists in the world there. So fortunately, healthcare, because that was a concern, of people. It's like, well, what if, and all those what ifs, all the negative what ifs, they have not come to fruition. And, I just, every day I wake up grateful that I didn't give in to those negative, and that I shifted to, well, what if it is possible? What am I not seeing that is possible? And, there is something magical about asking that question. It just completely shifts our mindset, but it also allows us to see things that we didn't see before, to connect dots that we never connected before. And all of a sudden, what seemed impossible was very possible. Then it was just about, how the heck do we make this move? And that's a whole nother story of, how do you do that in 3 months? And we had not been here before. We came here 3 weeks before we moved for 4 days to find a place to rent. And then went back home, finished doing everything, and then got on a plane and moved down here. And a lot of people thought we were crazy, and it was a little crazy, but, for us, it's turned out to be amazing. We love the people, we love the culture, lots of learning opportunities, endless learning opportunities in a new country, new language, all of that. But I guess what I wanted to share is that when I finally made the decision, when we made the decision to move, it was like, well, what the heck are you going to do? What is it that you want to do? And my big thing was, everyone had been telling me forever, Kat, you need to write a book. You need to share the stories of how you went from impossible to possible. So one of my dreams was to write the book. The other was to expand my reach and my impact and be able to speak. And so in less than 3 years, I wrote and published my book. And I have, I've been on the Voice America Empowerment Channel for the last 3 months, being able to share that message to a global audience. So all those things that, I wanted to do, I've done. And I'll be honest, now I'm kind of like, what's next? So I'm
yes,
kind
you
of
sort
back.
of feed off that, don't you?
Yeah.
I've achieved that, and against all odds at times, and then that really motivates you to want to keep going, doesn't it? So yeah, and like, not everyone needs to go to the extreme that you did, where you've packed up, gone to a new place, but there's also, I think, we need to make time to investigate our possibilities. So you wanted to write a book, or people suggested you did. Perhaps in your old life, you would not probably have had the time to do that. But making those changes to one, you wanted something different in life, so you did that. That then gave you the opportunity to be able to explore other things that you had wanted to do, but were probably just shoved aside because you didn't
Yeah.
have the time.
Yeah. And, it's interesting that no matter how many times you do something and have a positive outcome, you make that step of faith and you do something that's felt impossible and you do it and it's like, oh, great. And it's just interesting that every time a new thing comes up, there's still that doubt. There's still
Oh,
that,
yes.
the tapes, it's just amazing. No matter how many times I've done this over and over again, that every single time there's a new, and it's not just a new challenge, it can be a new opportunity. Something that kind of like tugs at your heart and you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Well, maybe I could do that. And then all those thoughts start coming in again. So I'm well aware that I am just as apt to have those challenges, you know, and so I have a passion about sharing, what I've, how I've been able to do those things in the hopes that other women, particularly women over 50, who are facing some kind of disruption in their life. And it could be a disruption because of some transition that they're facing, or even something that they're choosing that they want to do, like I did, want to do something different. That any disruption, any transition can trigger all that negativity.
Yeah.
And so it's all about, how do you get past that? How do you
That,
move
yeah.
through it?
Yeah. And we've all got it. But it does come down to your mindset as well, and perhaps sometimes how much you really want something. But tell me more about the book, From Doubt to Do. What can readers expect?
Well, I think as they read through the book, it's a series of stories throughout my life of where I had, starting with the fact that I was born in a secret city.
Yes, I read that, and that's intriguing.
Yeah, born in a secret city. My parents were both involved in at Los Alamos, New Mexico, which is where they developed the bomb.
Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, how's that for a legacy?
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
it wasn't my choice to be there, but that whole idea of being raised in a very secretive environment and how that influenced my life early on, particularly in terms of, can I trust, people? What can I share? Or it's been so long that I couldn't share that it became difficult to share and trust other people. And I think going on the road for what turned out to be 2 years with Up With People gave me that confidence, to kind of step into my own and own who I was apart from that, and move forward. And then, through these stories, I share a framework that, based on all my experiences, like, how did I do that? Not just, like having the right mindset, that's one thing. But then it's like, once you decide you want to do something significantly different, how do you walk that out? So I have a framework which has 4 C's. And the first is courage, which is kind of that mindset piece of, having the courage to say hell yes to something that you really want, that's tugging at your heart, and you have no idea how you're going to make it happen. So the courage piece. Once you say, okay, I'm gonna step out, then it's all about the second C, which is clarity. Getting the clarity around, so what is that going to look like? What do I really want that next chapter of my life to look like? And just as importantly, why? And you kind of alluded to this, like, why is that so important to me? because you can have the courage to make that initial step forward. You can get clarity around what you want it to look like, but if you don't know why and have a really strong why, the first time all that negativity comes in from yourself or other people, it's very easy to just throw up your hands. So getting that
Yes, so you sort of,
clarity.
sorry to interrupt there, but you need to come back to the why, because sometimes you go, well, why am I doing this? And then
Yeah.
if you've got the answer, you then can overcome those barriers and keep going because you know why you want to do it.
And I can tell you, in that 3 months when we were making that, getting ready to move to Mexico, there were many moments of like, holy, why the heck are
Yeah.
we doing this? Well, I had to go back to what my why really was. And it wasn't just because I wanted to do something different professionally. It's that my husband was 18 years older. And if we were going to ever have quality time together, I could not be
Yeah.
working the way that I was working before. So I had a really strong why. And I do share that, in the book. With each of those stories, I talk about the courage, the clarity. And once you have that clarity, then it's all about a hell yes commitment, the third C, an unwavering commitment to making it happen no matter what, which again ties back to the why. And then once you have that commitment, let's face it, you can have the courage, you can have the clarity, you can have the commitment, but then it's about what capacity are you going to need to build to do that next thing. So it's all about getting into that learner mindset of, what is it that I need to learn, whether it's skills, knowledge, what is it, where are there, what are my strengths? And I'm a big believer in starting with your strengths in terms of building new capacity. So what are my strengths that I can leverage as I'm figuring out the other things that I need to learn and do to be able to put this into practice? And then, these are 4 C's, but I have recently added a 5th C, which is at the center of each of those 4 C's, which is choice. Because at every moment in that journey, with every one of those 4 C's, you are always at choice. And so heightening your awareness of that choice and having a meaningful filter goes back to the why. So having a filter, like when you have to make a key decision in that process, what are you, kind of having a checklist of, does it fit this? Does it fit this? Does it fit this? To figure out, to ground you when you're kind of up in the air and you need to make a decision, make a choice.
And also having that framework there, especially the first few C's, will help you, I think, to, support. I mean, you may have support from family and friends, but there's often times when you come up with an idea or you want to do something and they go, well, why do you want to do that? Or, and I know when I wanted to start the podcast, a few people sort of commented and said, oh, well, what do you want to do that for? What have you got to say? And I could have stopped there and but I didn't. And I think that if you are confident in all those C's that you've talked about, it's much easier to overcome those naysayers or the people that don't want to support you. And I think that sort of gives you that armor to be able to keep going when perhaps you may not have any support.
And you're bringing up such an important part of it, which is, surrounding yourself with people that do believe in you, that will support you in making that. So having the confidence, as you just well pointed out, based on those 4 C's, having the confidence to be able to share what you're doing and why you're doing it, how you're doing it. But but then also finding people who will support you in that, kind of
and help,
trusted,
yeah.
whether it's family, friends, or maybe it's people completely outside of your current circle that you can connect with. And, that was really important, when we moved, because even before we moved, I had made some connections with people down here in Mexico who had been there, done that, and so when we landed, I already had some support system here to help us, especially in the first year when everything was new,
Yeah, yes,
figuring out
yeah.
everything. So in the book, those stories are examples. I use those as examples for that framework, specifically in the context of different types of impossible things, from business to very personal, where
Which is, oh, go on.
yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, which is important because sometimes you can read a book and, it's got all the framework and everything in it, but adding those personal experiences and examples really helps the reader to become a bit more invested and to think, oh, okay, well, perhaps they might be going through something similar, or they can adapt what they're going through and know, well, she's been through that, and look how she handled it and that sort of thing. So
Well,
I think that's important to sort of not just give the theory, but to actually give the examples and the practicalities.
that was really important to me, because it's one thing to write a memoir, oh, that's nice, but, building in that framework was very intentional, and using the stories as context to help people understand each of those four C's, their principles, and they're actionable. And what I did also is, there's two parts to the book, and the first part are those stories and the four C's. But throughout the stories, I also put in reflective moments for the reader, based on whatever the content is. And so in part two, I actually have a journal that
Right.
coincides with the first part. So in chapter one, I may ask them to reflect on certain things. Then in part two, there's a deeper dive so that they can continue to reflect and capture their journey, throughout the book.
And you write, I just want to say this quote, I think I got it from your website. Every adventure starts with embracing disruption. And that is something that, we go along, and you say about living legacy by design or default. And a lot of us just stay in default because that's our comfort zone, and we don't have the self-belief, or we don't want, with fear of change, whatever it is, we don't think we've got the capacity. I like that idea about embracing disruption. It was like another quote I remember from years ago, do what you fear, and the death of fear is certain. And so how do we embrace that disruption? I suppose we've been talking about that.
But again, this all comes down to shifting our mindset about it. I talk about making disruption your BFF. What if disruption can be your best friend? And the perfect example for me is COVID. I mean, that was a huge disruption, and it could have been really horrible, and on the other hand, if it weren't for that disruption, I wouldn't have the opportunity to stop and reflect and realize that I was burned out, and have that aha that I want a new life. So that disruption actually was such a gift for me and for many people. I know so many people that COVID actually ended up being transformational for them in some way, whether it was a business or personal aspect of it. And, so if or when we embrace disruption as our best friend, what that means is looking for what is in that disruption. And I heard a quote the other day that really stuck with me, which is, we can either think like, this is happening to me and woe is me, and I've been there at times, or we can say, what if this is happening for me? So if this is happening for me, there's a reason. So what is, do some soul searching in terms of, really listening to your gut and like, what else could be possible that never would have been even in my frame of mind had this not happened. And then it's being able to utilize those 4 C's to get at a more practical, functional level of, okay, starting that road of finding clarity around what the new possibilities are and what we want them to be. What can we create? It's like not being at the effect of, but rather, using that as a catalyst to discover and to listen to that thing that maybe has been tugging at our heart that we've ignored. And I mean, I in hindsight, I look back and I think, I probably was feeling a lot of that unrest and, a desire for something different, but I was so busy being busy.
Yeah, I was just going to raise that people, to do what you're suggesting, we have to give ourselves the time to actually think and reflect. And because if you said to me, well, what would you really like to do? My mind's a jumble. I don't have any clear path because I've got so much going on in my life. When you're forced to stop, I mean, that, as you say, COVID in one way was a blessing because it really made people reevaluate lots of areas in their lives. And or if you're going through some other change, like I've got a friend who's gone through a marriage breakdown, and so that's a huge change in their life, but it's also, and whilst that's devastating, it's also an opportunity for her to say, well, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? But taking that time away, because as you say, we're busy being busy, and some of us wear the busyness badge, like a badge of honour. We've got to step back to be able to think and clear our mind.
And there's something else with that, and that is giving ourselves permission. Okay, because we've been, taught like that's selfish, I think, or that we're not worthy of it. I mean, that could be a mindset thing. But I mean, the whole concept of giving ourselves permission to even ponder what else is possible, sometimes that's a huge leap for people.
Yes, because it just goes against our thinking, our psyche of what we've thought for years. I mean, and those setting the boundaries, the being able to say no, all those things, or as women in particular feeling guilt for different things, that it's all sort of built up over the years, and being a mother or whatever, you're dividing yourself. You don't want to let anyone down, but you're letting yourself down because you're not following what you really want to do.
Well, we end up living our lives by shoulds. I joke, should all over ourselves, or other people should all over us, so getting over that, letting go of the shoulds, our own. I mean, I had plenty of them, and the shoulds coming from other people, and also the have tos. Oh, I have to do this, or you have to do this, or, all those things that get in the way of us giving ourselves permission to depart from where we've been and to, ponder what else is possible. It's huge.
Yeah, yeah. So what's one thing you can sort of share with us? We've got the 4 C's, and if someone's listening to you and they think, oh, I just don't know where I am, they need to get the book for a start, and I'll be putting all the links to contact you and to get the book in the show notes. But what's something someone could do today, just a little step, because sometimes it can be quite overwhelming when you even think about the change, so then you procrastinate and you keep putting it aside. What's one little thing that we could do today to just take that first step?
I know this is going to sound maybe cliche, I don't know, but for me, it's like, what if it was impossible to fail? If it was impossible for you to fail, what would you give yourself permission to even explore?
That's
So
something.
I think, again, it's just interrupting the negative or the vacuum of I don't know. But a lot of times that I don't know is really a cover up for I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I have doubts.
And I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah. So, giving yourself permission to think about what would I do if I knew it was impossible to fail?
I'm writing that down.
Yeah. What would I do
that's a great
if I
one.
knew it was impossible to fail?
Yeah. There, that sort of opens up. It sort of brings down a few barriers there, because you don't necessarily have to do that, but you could come up with these wild ideas. But from that, it gets you thinking. And I think that's the important part.
Well, and once you start down that road, there are going to be those thoughts. Even with that thought, you'll say, oh, if I wasn't going to fail, I would, but. And then there would be the, oh yeah, but what if? And in that moment, it's a matter of what if it is possible. So it's a constant reinforcement, throughout that process of challenging that thought immediately. And I think there's something very powerful about getting it out of your head onto a piece of paper.
Yes, writing it down.
And so
I've done that, and then I go back and, perhaps quite some time later, and it shows me what my thought patterns were then, and whether I have continued on or something like that. But, you do it. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good starting place because you're going to find out pretty quickly what those thoughts are. And again, if you can get them out of your head and on a piece of paper and challenge the negative assumption or the limiting belief or whatever it is, and can keep working through that, you'll get a lot of insight.
Well, Kat, we're coming to the end of our interview, and you have so much information. How has your husband settled into life?
So I have to say, my husband initially was like, there's 4 words that he's afraid of. I have an idea.
Oh, yeah.
30 years we've been married, and every time he hears those 4 words, it's like, oh my gosh, what is she going to do now? Right? So imagine when I said, oh, let's move to Mexico, I have an idea. And he was leaving a home he had been in for 40 years. And, he was really invested in his shop, that he had built over all that time. And so it was a big deal at his age to, pick up and move his entire life to a foreign country with his crazy wife. And I will say, after we were here about a year, he said, honey, I have to say, I have no regrets.
Oh, that's good.
I have no
mm,
regrets. This is, I never would have thought of doing this. And I thought you were crazy to do it. And now, the life that we have together and the time that we're able to spend together and experience life together in a beautiful environment, with a beautiful community that we've built that we never had where we were before because everyone was so busy, you know. It's been
Oh, well, that's
wonderful.
great. That's really good to hear. So, as I said, we're coming to the end of our conversation, and you've really been a delight to chat to, with lots of information and motivating us to think about, what we could do if nothing was, if we failed to the impossible. But what I want to ask you is a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what does being a woman living well after 50 mean to you?
It means giving myself permission to do what the heck I want, you know, to
Yeah,
pursue the things that I've always wanted to do, um, and not feel guilty about it. And yeah, to give myself
yeah.
permission to pursue the life that I really want, and to make the impact that I really want.
Well, that's a great testament to finish on, and I thank you, Kat O'Sullivan, for joining me today and sharing your story and talking about your book From Doubt to Do. So, best of luck for the future, and you appear to be very happy and settled. So that's been a wonderful outcome for you.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Well, what would you do if you knew it was impossible to fail? That's the message we're taking away today from my interview with Kat O'Sullivan, author of From Doubt to Do. We really talked about how to make the shift from impossible to possible, and about Kat's life and what she's done and how she approaches making changes and going for things that we really want to do. So I hope you've enjoyed the episode and that you'll share it with a friend who would definitely benefit from it, I'm sure. And I'd like to hear what you would do if you knew it was impossible to fail. So that's it for this episode. Until next time, remember to live well, enjoy life, and most of all, be a woman living life your way. Bye for now.